Welcome to Seeking God, where we consider the questions and stories regarding faith. Sometimes it just gets lonely. Sometimes there just seems to be no one around, no one who can touch our lives, no one who can chat with us, laugh with us, play with us, do the various things that are important in our lives. You know, it seems that that's especially true now during this time of the coronavirus, of COVID-19. It seems that with all of the various things going on, even on those really good days, if we take seriously the idea of isolation, we wind up being alone a lot, and we wind up being lonely. This may seem to be some sort of social thing for us. It may seem to only relate to our social lives, our day-to-day existence, and perhaps it has nothing to do with our spiritual lives. But think about this. How many of the various faith traditions find importance in gathering together in some way? Sometimes it's small gatherings of 2 or 3. Sometimes it's larger gatherings. Sometimes it involves worship. Sometimes it involves entertainment. Sometimes it involves just socially being together. So when we're forced to be alone, that can have really mixed consequences for us. On the one hand, it may offer us time when we can recharge our batteries alone. We don't have to feel the need of other people to be present, to somehow interact with them, to somehow be there with them in some ways that allows us just to be ourselves and to be alone. If you or I are more introverted, that's important times for us. Those are times of rejuvenation, refreshment, and where we then are better able to come back and be with other people. For others of us, it may be more difficult, and we may find those times alone to be difficult. But there is, I think, a distinction between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is an act of choice. There's something there where you and I choose to be alone. We could obviously choose to be with someone. We could choose to interact with them. We could call them on the phone, or we could email them, or we could Zoom with them, or whatever our preferred mode of interaction is. We could choose to do that. But loneliness is something much different. Loneliness involves an agitation and anxiety about where we are at the time. Somehow we feel unable to connect with other people. We are not simply alone. We are seriously bothered with being alone. And here's the really bizarre part of this. You can be lonely and be with other people. Because often loneliness doesn't have to do with being alone. It has to do with being disconnected. So during this time of isolation and setting ourselves apart for our own sake and for the sake of others as well, this loneliness can be hard to deal with. It can make our daily lives a challenge. It can make us anxious and depressed. It can make us long for something more. So what I would like to do is just to offer a few suggestions of how to deal with loneliness. And these are not exhaustive. They're not everything that can happen. They're just some that come to mind today. Maybe at another time I will offer some more. But if you can find value in these, please pass them along to others too. My first suggestion is this: make the choice to be alone. Now that may sound strange. If I'm lonely, why would I want to make the choice to be alone? Well, for a couple of reasons. One is that there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. And if you choose to be alone, you have control over what is contained within that time period, what it means for you to be alone. You can choose during that time to be quiet. You can choose during that time to listen to music, but it is your choice. It is not being imposed on you by anyone else. And there's something freeing that comes in being able to make that choice. So, choose to be alone. Second, take some time and ask yourself, what am I seeking? What kind of connection do I want in my life? Am I lonely for someone or something in particular? What do I feel would make me feel complete? What do I think would do that? You see, if we can begin to engage that sense of loneliness and to wonder about it, then we can begin also to think through possible ways to address it. Maybe your loneliness comes because you're missing a family member. Maybe your loneliness is coming not because you're lonely, but because you feel badly about something you've done to someone else. What is it that you're actually feeling in this moment? And what would make you feel better? This can give us all some idea of where our loneliness is rooted. So make it a time of self-evaluation and consideration. Third, do something. Move. Get out and walk. Engage in something entertaining or distracting. Put together a puzzle. Watch a good movie. Something that draws your attention, and take a break from the loneliness, that drive, that feeling that you have. Distract yourself from those feelings. The last thing I want to suggest to you today is seek meaningful contact with someone else. Now notice I say meaningful contact. I want to suggest to us that social media is not meaningful contact, that it is very superficial. and that it makes it easy for us to get caught up in various controversies and various things that may actually help fuel the feelings that we're having. What I'm suggesting is call a good friend on the phone. Meet up with someone at the park and go for a walk. Talk with someone who may not be your best friend, but who cares enough about you to be with you. Email or Zoom or Skype or whatever ways you can connect with people. It's always, I think, better if you can do that in person, but we can't always do that now. Make the best of it that you can for the time being. Those moments can help feed us. It can touch our spirit. It can help us move beyond the sense of loneliness. All of these, I think, are important avenues, but I think that they are way stations to something more important. I think ultimately our sense of loneliness comes from our feeling disconnected from the holy and from the divine. And that if we can take these small steps, then maybe as we move closer to the holy in our lives, then that sense of holiness will diminish. As I say, there are other things that we will talk about at different times. But please know this, that you are not alone in your loneliness, but that there are ways to begin to address it. And we will all need to do this. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for joining me in looking at ways to address our loneliness. Thank you for joining me in seeking God.